Hi, I'm Bob Trask, and this is our weekly reset. Today I'm going to talk about something I think you're going to be interested in. You live forever. You live forever. Mayflies live for only one day. Galapagos tortoises can reach up to an age of 170 years old. And a Greenland shark holds the world record at over 400 years. But do they really die when they go out of this body? Can any being, living being, ever really die? That's the question. All the leaders in our human race have perpetrated the myth of death. It's a myth. It's a myth. Depending on which religion or philosophy we follow as we leave our bodies, we'll be going in one of four directions, depending on your religion, depending on your philosophy. Number one, we'll simply disappear. Number one is we'll simply disappear. The lives we've lived will have had no purpose and no meaning. We'll just simply cease to exist. Number two, we'll kneel before an almighty man in a cloak and be judged and then sent either to heaven where the streets are paved in gold or to hell to burn forever and ever. That's a choice. Or number three, we'll go through a metamorphosis and be reincarnated in order to pay for the karmic debts we earned from the evils of this lifetime. A reincarnation, depending on our level of evil, will be as a human, a monkey, a dog, or even as a bug. Number four, we will not die, but move into other dimensions and other universes where life's adventures will continue. The largest study on Earth, the largest study on death in the world, carried out in 15 medical centers across the US and in Europe, studying 2,000 people who died and were clinically dead. At least 40% of them came back from that state and were fully aware of what had gone on with them, even though it had gone beyond the threshold of death. Sometimes they were gone for minutes and sometimes for hours. What does this all tell us about dying? Doctors in this study discovered that though physical bodies may cease to function, consciousness simply does not die with the body, and that we will still be conscious even when our hearts and our brains are gone. Please remember, this was not a small study. This was carried out on 2,000 people in 15 medical centers across the US and Europe. So can we let this truth change the way we live today? Can we live with a new grace and a new nobility, knowing that we live forever? Spiritual master Muji said, ego is a ghost who is terrified of dying. What's he actually saying there? What he's actually saying is that our egos occupy so much of our minds. Our egos direct us. Our egos tell us where to go and where not to go, what to think and what not to think. Our egos are constantly in charge of our lives, and our egos are terrified of death. Why? Because what's true is that when our bodies die, our egos evaporate, they're gone. And all we are is pure consciousness. And what is consciousness? Well, when you're meditating and you stop thinking, if you're able to do that, then you are just aware. You're not thinking, you're just aware. If you can stay with me for just a minute on that, if you look around the room that you're in and you see the different things in the room, but you don't think about them, you stop your thinking and you just look. No thought, just look. Then that's awareness. And so when we die, The ego shuts off and it's only awareness. In other words, instead of eating without tasting, we're tasting, 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 not just looking, but seeing, not just listening, but hearing, touching, totally awake to the universe. But our ego clouds that over, doesn't it? It clouds that over. And oftentimes we're not really seeing, we're not really hearing, we're not really tasting. And the reason for that is because we're all caught up in thoughts. And the thoughts are our ego. And yes, when our bodies die, our ego dies, but our consciousness lives on. In 1994, orthopedic surgeon Tony Cicoria, was struck by a bolt of lightning. He felt himself flying backward, and the next thing he remembered was turning around to see his body lying on the ground behind him. Cicoria said he stood there and watched a woman performing CPR on his body. And then he floated up a flight of stairs to watch his children playing in their rooms. And eventually he was surrounded by a bluish white light and began to feel completely at peace, complete peace and well-being. He said it was the highest and lowest points. He said the highest and lowest points of his life raced by him. And he was accelerating and being drawn up. Then he said, just as I was saying to myself, this is the most glorious feeling I have ever had, slam, he was back in his body. Now, there have been tens of thousands of proven near-death experiences where so-called dead people remained conscious for minutes or even hours. What would we think about our lives if we were Mr. Cicoria? Stephen Levine said, if you're going to die soon and had only one phone call that you could make, who would you call? And what would you say? And why are you waiting? In 1988, actress Jane Seymour went into anaphylactic shock. Her vital functions shut down, but her mind stayed crisply aware. I had the vision of seeing a white light and looking down and seeing myself in this bedroom with a nurse frantically trying to save my life and jabbing injections in me. And I'm calmly watching this whole thing, describing a scene common in reports from others who've gone through physical death and yet were consciously alive. Throughout our lives, most of us have been devastated by the finality of death as it's taught by religions. But the good news is that we now know that death's not final. Here's an example. We're now fully conscious. And should we lose a leg through an accident, would we be only partially here? Wouldn't we still be fully conscious? What about both legs and both arms? Would we still be fully conscious? Because we're not our bodies. We're consciousness of the universe, consciousness of the universe, and therefore we're not destroyable. So what seems mostly true to you? An Almighty with his beard and cloak sending us to either heaven or hell, or being reincarnated as a human, a monkey, a dog, or even a bug, or simply disappearing, our life having had no purpose, no meaning, and we now cease to exist in any form, or we shift into parallel universes to continue our life adventures. Okay, we chose number 4. To move into other dimensions and universes and to continue our life adventures. But are we sure other dimensions and universes even exist? Or is that just a hopeful thinking? Well, here's the good news. It's now scientific fact that our universe is but one of a massive ocean of universes called the multiverse. Russian physicist Andrei Lind and many other physicists say that there is an infinity of universes. And physicist Hugh Everett says the decisions we make in this universe may have implications for other universes of ourselves living in parallel worlds. Michael Talbot said, we're perceivers. We're an awareness. We're not objects. We have no solidity. We are boundless. What does that all mean for us here today? It means that this thing we've been seeing as life is not limited. Not limited in this time, not limited in this place. Truly, we were never born, except physically, and will never die, except physically. But when I say we'll never die except physically, it's a little bit of a misstatement because we'll never die purely. Our bodies will die. If you can call it death, they aren't dead. I mean, they become other things. The flesh of our body, the cells, the subatomic particles move on into other bodies, into other things. As consciousness, we've lived and will live forever. We're not just aware, we are awareness itself. Can I repeat that? We're not just aware, we are awareness, awareness itself. And that being the case, and seeing that what we think and do and have here may have implications in other words, other universes that we now inhabit or will inhabit, wouldn't it be a good idea to start fully living in this life right now, fully living, to reach for the golden ring, to make this the most it can possibly be? But I have to tell you that, I mean, and I know you know this is true, is that our lives, as we live them day by day, month by month, year by year, are in a large way being leaned on. Like there's a big thing leaning against our lives, leaning against our minds, leaning against our consciousness. And that's that we only have so much time left because we're going to die. But if you know you can't die, even if you wanted to, you can't die. If you knew that, wouldn't you start living differently? Wouldn't you feel a freedom? Wouldn't you feel a freedom and a passion for reality? And wouldn't that thing that we call awareness, consciousness, become more dominant in your life? Can you join me today in just knowing that you are forever and that you're already living in parallel universes? This is just one of many, 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 ultimately infinity of experiences and of lives that you're living. And when people talk about past life, or excuse me, when people talk about, about past lives, like they do a past life regression and they go back and they see themselves, as a queen or a king or a serf or a servant or something. When they go back and see them and they see those lives, they think that happened way back sometime. It's probably, very probably, it's happening right now. Otherwise, you couldn't get in touch with it. But it's probably happening right now because in truth, there is no back and there is no forward. There's only now. All things that are unraveling in this instant of right now. And as it unravels in this instant of right now, it is all time and all space. So all past is present and all future is present. And we in this incarnation have created a chronological timeline that we move along like ants crawling along a piece of string. And then we come to the end and we fall off. But in truth, no matter where we are on that piece of string, it's now, it's right now. And now is forever. I know that's a concept that's a little difficult to conceive, but if you stay with me just for a minute, I think I can prove that there's only now. So is it right now? Is it now? Is it now right now? And you'll say, yes, it's now. Is it still now? Yes. Is it still now? Yes. So it's now. Wherever we are, whatever we're experiencing, whatever we're thinking, doing, having, wherever our consciousness is focused, that's eternity. And that eternity is already going on in multiple other universes. So let's forget about being dead. Let's really reach for the golden ring. Let's make this life the most it can be. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, many people die with their music still in them. Why is this so, he asks. Too often it's because they're always getting ready to live before they know it, time runs out. But maybe what's going on in your life makes it seem impossible to live fully. Maybe there's someone in your life that makes living fully seem impossible to you. Please don't let that stop you. Please. It's only our attitudes, and that tell us that we're trapped. We're stuck. We can never escape the trap if we are the trap. It's only our attitudes that tell us we're trapped, that we're stuck, and we can never escape a trap if we are the trap. We must seek and believe an opportunity coming our way. Always there's an opportunity coming our way. Always. And when we give up on opportunities, when we lose hope, then everything turns bad, doesn't it? But this is the paradise. Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. He didn't say that's someplace you're going to go after you die. He said the kingdom is within you. The kingdom is within us. Can we open it? Can we open the door to that kingdom? Joseph Campbell so beautifully said, follow your bliss. Follow your bliss. If we follow our bliss, if we follow the passion within inside of us, if we follow that little voice calling out that says, be me, be me, be me. If we follow that, then we become fully alive, fully alive. Robert Lanza said, why are you here now, perched seemingly by chance on the cutting edge of all infinity? The answer is simple. The door is never closed. The mathematical possibility of your conscious ending is zero. The mathematical possibility of your consciousness ending is zero. Hazel Lee said, I held a moment in my hand, brilliant as a star, fragile as a flower, a tiny sliver of 1 hour. I dropped it carelessly. I didn't know I held opportunity. What is opportunity? It's the chance, it's the open door that calls to us to live fully, to live fully, to stop thinking so much. Can you go through a half hour or a day or even a minute without thinking? Can you just say no thought? Can you just be aware, just conscious, without allowing the subconscious mind, the ego, to dominate you? Finally, today, I want to quote Diane Ackerman. She said, I don't want to get to the end of my life and find out that I lived just the length of it. I want to have lived the width of it as well. I want to have lived the width of it as well. Let's go forward knowing that we can't die. Let's get that leaning tower off of us. Let's get that off of us so that we can be free. We're going to live forever. We're already living forever. We are right now living forever. And forever is forever and forever, forever, forever. So let's get that silly religious nonsense of dying off of us and be one with the scientists who tell us that consciousness goes on forever. Thank you. Thank you for being with me this week. I'm sorry that I don't have a video, but somehow my camera's not working. But anyway, the message is there, and I hope it helps you. Would you please stop by bobtrask.com and leave a donation? And would you also please let other people know that this is going on and have them come and join us? Thank you very much. I love you, and I'll see you next week.